Right, man. Well, what's going on, dude?
Not much.
I feel like you're in
Looking
that
forward to
office.
doing this one.
I know. I feel like you're in that office all day.
Yeah, I
Anytime,
honestly do. I pretty much sit up here and I leave it to hang out with the family and go to the gym, and that's about it.
anytime I see, I check TikTok. It's got your little green thing, and it's got that live indicator thing on there. Like, man,
Yeah,
this guy's a workhorse. But
yeah,
so, dude, I just want to, it's our first time actually like talking, messaging and chatting on live on each other's live and all that stuff. So I feel like I know you, but this is our first time actually like having a conversation. So
yeah,
what I want to know is just a little bit about like your background, how I don't want this to turn into like a hacky interview. I don't want you to think that because we're going to be chatting about everything, and hopefully this is a weekly thing that we can do. So I'm just kind of curious, what got you to where you are now with being, the biohacker guy that you are.
yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm disappointed that we didn't have our like cycle synced good enough to be matching in the same shirt.
Oh, I
I
know.
wore your favorite, hoping we
Not-
would line up together. But no, so I kind of like grew up around like fitness and stuff like that. So my dad, he always competed in well he didn't do like full powerlifting. He just did bench press competitions. And so I kind of like grew up in that kind of like health and fitness space. And I remember, when I was like 10 years old, I would take like it was like pure German creatine and it came in like this green and black like
no.
container. It was like the best one allegedly. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Um,
Creapure. That's Creapure.
yeah.
That's the original. Yeah.
And you could get it for like 12 bucks and it would last you for like 5 years. I mean, the thing was amazing. And now it's, 30 times the price for creatine. But so I was always had like some exposure to that. And that kind of like got me into lifting myself. And so I was always like in that space, played, rugby in college and did powerlifting in college and stuff like that. But when I got out, I went into the military and went through all that stuff, went to Ranger School. So I went through Ranger School, which is a little bit different. That's more of like a leadership course where you can get a Ranger tab, which is a qualification. And then I went through the selection process for the 75th Ranger Regiment, which is a special operations organization. So I'd done those things, did some cool stuff in the military, but it really had just like continued to beat my body down and break my body down. And I remember it was probably, I don't even remember how long ago, but when people ask me the question, it's like at least 10 years ago, where people were talking about the Wolverine stack, the
Yeah.
BPC and TB. And it was like you would see a video on like Instagram when you're scrolling through of somebody talking about that, but it was nobody like knew about like you're like, where do you even find these things? What is this thing? They would just
Yep.
talk about it. And it definitely wasn't like it was now where the information is accessible. And so you would hear them and and it's kind of funny too, because I remember back like 10 years ago. So I'm 31. So I was like 21 years old. Right. And that was also the phase of like, um, the, not SARMs, but, I don't think we can
For
say that word
hormones.
too for YouTube. Yeah, when those things were like getting super popular and everybody was ordering like the Epistanes and stuff like that. I wasn't, but all of my friends were, right? But you're like, there's no way this stuff works, and you see people talk. All that stuff was coming out at that time too, and so you're seeing like all this information overload with this random stuff everywhere, and so it was just kind of like you dismiss it. They're like, yeah, it can heal your tendons and everything's fixed. And you kind of like think like, no, this is so silly. These things are like snake oil, which is what people still do now. I think a lot of people are super educated in it more so than they were, but they're like, these are snake oil. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so then over time, it was like, I had a buddy who would use them and I would get more exposure to it. And I was like, well, let me just try these things out. Because I had gotten to a point where my body was so broken from, jumping out of airplanes or
Yeah.
the I used to joke, I never did warm ups because I would say if my muscles are tighter, they would be more explosive. It was a joke. I just didn't like stretching.
Then
But
it
I
turned
have,
out to be true, kind of.
yeah, maybe a little true. But I have a slap tear and arthritis in my left shoulder. That's the only thing I've ever had like scanned to see. Everything else, I probably have arthritis in every joint if they actually looked at it. I mean, everything was so beat down. And so I started using them and I was like, this is insanity. Like for the first time, I can do like a push up without pain, where I used to be able to knock them out like it was nobody's problem. And, then it was kind of like one of those things where like I started gaining weight in the military. I could still perform, but I started gaining weight because I just like had less of a desire to be active because everything hurt. And I was also like a newer dad with a infant baby, and it was like you're tired and deprived, and so then you're hurting and everything sucks. Everything's just a miserable experience, and you're like, I don't really have a desire or motivation to do it. And so then I just started to use peptides, and I was like, holy crap, man! Like I feel so much better. And the GLPs wasn't really what got me into it. It was those other benefits, right? Because I think, especially as a man, it's hard to like put your pride aside and be like, yeah, dude, I'm fat and I probably should do something about this, and like I should probably get myself back together. And especially when you can still perform like relatively well in terms of fitness standards. Like I could still do really well in the fitness test for the military and stuff like that. Never had an issue as I was gaining weight, but like it was definitely one of those things where like I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And so then I was just like, I didn't even know that the space existed on TikTok. And so I was like, well, I've loved these things. Why don't I just start talking about them? Because I didn't have time to do that type of thing before. And I definitely wasn't going to represent myself like that when I was in the military, is like using stuff. And so I was just like, well, let me just start making videos. And dude, my first videos were so embarrassing. I looked at them and I was like, golly, this is the worst video. But all I wanted to do was just like tell people about them. And then it just like one thing led to another. And I was just kind of went from there in terms of like the social media space. But getting into it was a necessity for me because my body was in like just constant pain from just joint injuries and tissue injuries and stuff like that.
All that wear and tear. So that was one of my other questions. What was your introductory to peptides? And you said BPC, which was the exact same.
BPC.
Yeah, that was the exact same for me, but it was probably only 4, 5 years ago, maybe for me. My first, I had like a minor quad tear. Um, what was I doing? A hack squat, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and on my way down, and the weight felt super light this day, which I guess is a lot of other people's story. Now that I've heard a lot of these stories, they go in and they're one day they're just feeling insanely strong, so the weight's moving, and so you
Yeah.
just keep working up, working up, working up. And I had like 6 plates each side on this hack squat, which yeah, it was a fairly light hack squat. It wasn't like a Cybex or something that was brutal, but um, came down to the first rep, and I fully intended to go up another plate for my actual working set. But I came out of the hole on this one, and my eyes were closed because I was just concentrating. And I thought my buddy that was at the gym with me that day frogged me in the leg on my way up. So my eyes popped open, and he was nowhere in sight. So I kind of closed it out and racked it. But that was the first thing that I used, and I had heard about it and no experience with them. And I was a skeptic, I guess, like anything else. And even when I started lifting and going to the gym and trying to put on weight from being a scrawny kid, that I was super skeptic about everything. So I'd go to the
Yeah.
supplement store and ask a bunch of questions from the guy that this was a strongman powerlifter guy that was there. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do or look like. I just knew I didn't want to be scrawny. And I'd ask a bunch of questions, and I would leave and not buy a single thing. And then I'd go
Yeah.
home and research everything that he just said until I confirmed in my head that it was safe. So that was where it really, the creatine and the protein powder and the pre-workout, all those things started happening. I was the same
Yeah.
like with peptide usage. And the GLP-1 thing specifically for me came on last January. I still had my supplement store, and I had people coming in, that were on semaglutide mostly at the time. They would come in and ask me a bunch of questions, and I try to get down to the bottom of what their issues were. And they're like, "Well, I'm on this shot, this Ozempic shot, and I can't eat, but the doctor's saying I need to, get my protein in." And I'm like, "Okay, there's a problem here."
Yeah.
And I dealt with people who had like gastric bypass sleeves or the surgery or whatever in the past, and I knew that they couldn't consume a lot of food, but I didn't really fully understand why people weren't able to eat on the GLP-1. So that sent me down a rabbit hole, just digging as deep into it as I could to figure out, well, how do we fix these problems? Ultimately, just kind of coming to the conclusion that they're just taking too much, and the
Yeah.
physicians truly don't know how to dose these things, and they put them on a schedule and they tell them this is your dose for this many weeks, this is your dose for this many weeks, and it continues to climb without there being an actual, I guess, a check-in, a physical, assessment, asking them questions about the side effects. And so they ended up dosing, too frequently. So,
Yeah.
but there's so many on the market now that that's kind of what sprung my interest was what do all these things do? In my experience with the BBC was that it worked. Obviously, I healed up from two separate injuries, So that's kind of what sprung that for me. But man, you've blown up. I just started posting here in January, really, and like talking more about what I'm passionate about, keeping people healthy with bodybuilding. The peptides is a part of that equation. It's not the whole piece.
Yeah.
I went to a convention last April with my fiance and a company that she works for, and they were really into this. This was basically a biohacking convention, and I'd only been 3 months into it at that point. So even when I went to this thing, I felt like I had a better understanding of peptides than the people at this convention. And this was even 10x was there, 10x Health and
Hmm.
and Gary Brecka and those people. And
Yeah.
I was like, some things are not adding up. It feels very sales pitchy. So
Yeah.
I needed to find out, okay, what actually works. And I'm not going to know until I start the application process and actually start putting things in my system and figuring out if I get the result that it claims that it gives. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I started. But man, you blew up fast. You got big fast, and you are on your second TikTok ban now. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm on account number 3.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that because how fast did you get your first one up, and what did you get up to?
So I started that account November 20th of this past year. And like I said, like I didn't know anything existed. I was literally on TikTok and I was searching for like anything peptides, anything. I couldn't find, I really couldn't find anything. And what's funny is the first like exposure I had was there was, I think it was 3 guys on the call and they were doing like a live. I didn't even know that TikTok, how like TikTok live worked, how any of that stuff worked. And they were just talking about like GLPs. They all worked with like I think they all worked with a telehealth company or they were on either brand name like Manjaro or Ozempic or something like that. And they just like let me come up and talk to them. And that was like the first exposure I had to like the social media space with it. On Christmas Day, I had 1,000 followers. And I think the first time I got banned was in probably April, maybe around April. And I was at like right at, okay, I
Keep
was
going.
right at 80,000 followers when I got hit with that ban. It might have been May. It might have been May. So I had grown pretty quickly over the course of like maybe 4 months or five or so. No, well, really, once I hit that 1,000 followers, I started to grow more because I really started pushing the lives. And so as I was doing more lives, that was really what helped me grow because I was able to interact with people kind of almost face to face. And so I grew up, went up probably 80,000 followers. I was gaining. I look at my metrics on TikTok, and I was gaining anywhere from like 4 to 7,000 followers a week, every week, pretty much consistently over the period of like a few months. And so it definitely started to go fast. It went 2,000 a week for a few weeks, and it would keep going up, and it was definitely growing pretty quickly. And then of course I got hit with that first ban, and I mean I didn't know what to expect or what to think. I tried to get that account back, but I just kind of accepted and moved on from there. Of like, well, I guess I just got to figure out what's next. And then I grew that second account, for probably 3 months. Was at 30,000 followers, banned again. So now I'm building back up, and now I'm like we said, I'm scared to post
Right.
anything and not get taken down. And so that's where I'm just posting my random hacky facts, is what we're calling them. But I think the one thing I was thinking about with what you were saying, I think where it helps when people like us are doing this type of thing is I think bodybuilding coaches or biohackers are really good in the sense that, like you said, that the doctors don't do that follow up piece. And I think that's where, if you think about a bodybuilder or bodybuilding coach, how do you adjust things throughout a prep cycle? You look at blood work, you look at responsiveness, and you go even in depth to the point where I've heard bodybuilding coaches say, I can tell you how you're going to wake up tomorrow and what you're going to look like and what your weight is going to be based off of how your body typically responds. And so people like bodybuilders, bodybuilding coaches, biohackers, people that are in that space look so much more at individual responses. And you've probably seen it a million times, but I will tell people on live, make this adjustment off of a very, very small piece of information they give me about their experience, their situation. They do it, and 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, you remember that stall that I was in? You were right. I broke it like within 2 weeks. And so we're so much more response based. And I think that when I try to present the information to people too, I try to present it in the simplest possible manner because 99% of people out there did like ninth grade science, and that was like their last exposure to science. Whenever they tell you that you got to stop, that you don't have to take it anymore, and so people don't know what lipolysis is. People don't know what BDNF is in your brain. Like nobody knows what those terms mean. But if you tell them this will help your brain fog, they're like, "Oh, that's sick. My brain fog is going to go away." And so just trying to relate to people on that level and knowing that I don't need to sound smart when with what I'm saying. I don't need to give you the entire, you know, scientific explanation of how a mechanism of action of something works in your body to get the point across to you. And I think that that helps a lot too. And people are able to understand that and digest it easily. So and honestly too, it was a learning curve for me to figure out how to modify my content to be a little bit more simple. Because my first videos, like I said, they were horrible. My first video was about BPC 157. And I was like, it was like 3 minutes of me just like rambling, I think, about it. And I was like, that nobody listens to that. And my first like viral video was about like basically breaking up your dosages of a GLP to mitigate fluctuations in your symptoms. And I showed like the GLP1plotter.com like graph of it, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life."
I think that's actually how I found you, was that video. And when I first got on, and I'd been using, you know, the peptides for a little while before I started talking about them. But when I'd first come to TikTok to talk about these things, and I would see people like you and some of these others that we're not going to name like pop up, I was always a skeptic of them as people and their information as well. So even with you, I think I probably saw a couple of your videos pop up before I actually decided that I liked you and that I thought your
Yeah,
information was good or that you had good intentions. And I think that, you know, most people, if you don't have a good, you know, judgment of character, you will take a lot of people at face value as meaning well for you. And so
yeah,
you subscribe to their theories and their thought processes and their opinions, and you start to take those things and basically turn them into your Bible of whatever type of content or information that you're consuming. And then you
yeah,
can't, because you are in the dark at the start, and you don't know all these mechanisms of actions, and you don't know the interactions between this one and this one, and you don't know if there's any you know, effects on blood work. You don't know where to look. You're just taking people for their word. And
yeah,
so we get a lot of people that are giving out poor information or just information that lacks any anecdote to it. And I completely understand that there's going to be a lack of information on a lot of these things that we do because the FDA doesn't see a need to funnel a study for that. That's a lot of money to make a study, to do a study for year, two, three, however many years that product needs to be studied. They're not going to funnel the money into it if they don't see there being a return on that investment in the future. So a lot of these
hmm,
things, after they get through in vitro or rodent studies, get completely tossed aside, and so they never make it to human trials. So that's where we come in, and the only way that we can go determine if these things have any human application is we become the rodent, and that's something
yeah.
we have to. You know, we take it upon ourselves so that we can go help others determine if this is worth your time or not. You know.
Yeah. And I think too, with what you said, it's one thing that's been really interesting about the social media space, and it makes it really hard for people who are trying to digest that information is one thing I've noticed, and it's been so interesting, is that people will show a video of a product. And it's honestly been crazy to watch. When I started my TikTok, I I didn't ever think about monetizing social media and doing that as my full-time job. I literally was like, I just want to tell people about these amazing things because it took me a long time to be willing to commit to this. I never thought I needed it. I was a skeptic for so long. And like, maybe I'll just start like talking about it on social media. And a lot of what you see now is people see the ability to monetize and like I didn't think I was ever going to get followed. I would get like 50 views on a video. Like I literally didn't ever think I would ever be anything because I had no exposure to any of that on social media. And I think that a lot of people honestly will you know, I'm not trying to take credit for this, but people will say that I kind of fueled a decent amount of growth in the TikTok space of people trying to talk about these and communicate these more or communicate about these more. And so I think a lot of people saw it as a money making opportunity to try to make content about these things as a way to make income, as a way as versus a way to help people and share experiences and tell them about those things. And so I think it makes it really hard for people to weed through. And the other thing is too is that you can find very reputable people that have a differing protocol. Like for example, you might not be wrong in this, but you might tell people that they should start with 250 micrograms of BPC, and I might say 500 because I
Yep.
think 500 is like the sweet spot amount. Neither of us are technically wrong because we're both in the range of it.
Yep.
But you, as a consumer of information that doesn't know, is going to say, well, I was watching that bearded muscle guy and he told me 250 and you said 500. Which one's right? Well, they're
Yep.
both right. And so people go through this like information overload of like, I don't know, I saw like 6,000 different
Yep.
things that are like, which one's right? And they just get so like lost in the information because there's so much out there. There's so much information out there.
Well, dude, you're exactly right. And my school of thought in regards to that, and the BPC is a perfect example because I do tell people to start at 250, and maybe that's where you've heard it from. And the main reason is because my philosophy with everything is if you can get more out of less, then start there. And so that's what
Yep.
I do with everyone. You know, if you're
Yep.
starting testosterone, you don't need to jump up to 500 milligrams if 200 milligrams gets the result. So that's, and if it
Right.
doesn't, fine. It doesn't, fine. Like you're saying, I'm on the glow right now for some tendonitis, and I figured, I don't have any experience with GHK CU, so let's go ahead and get the glow, and I can throw that in there as well and give some anecdotal report on that as well. And 250 mcgs, which would be the way I broke it down and reconstituted, that's how much of the BPC and TB500 I'm getting. And for 2 weeks, not much change. 3 days of bumping to 500, and I feel like it was a 50% reduction in my tendonitis. So, yes, there are points that we know are um, the efficacy amount that we know, statistically speaking, this is usually where you get the result that you want. But it doesn't mean that some don't respond to less. So it's just one of those.
Yep.
If this is your introductory to this thing, we'll start lower. The clinical trials
Yep.
may have started at 2 milligrams on retatrutide, but I'll tell you to start at 1.5. So
Yeah.
it's just a different thing. We're not telling them we're not telling them different information. We're just telling them different schools of thought, essentially.
Yep. And I
So
also didn't know you said that, but
yeah, you nailed it.
so
That's
but I
exactly
know
what I
people
said.
that will say that, like, hey, start at 250. And I also think of it too is I also the way that I approach it is always start at the lowest amount. There's nothing at the end of the day, you can always go up. Would you waste 2 doses worth because
Yep.
you didn't get anything out of it? But you can always go up with it. And I also look at side effect profile. A GLP is going to have a significantly higher side effect profile if you
Mm.
take too much versus like a BPC. And so I also try to keep that in mind too of like, well, what could be the negatives of starting a little bit higher with this versus working
So
your way up?
let's move on to we talked about the ban a little bit. How do you feel, and what do we know? What do you believe is the ultimate driver of the censorship and the restrictions? I think we agree on this, but I want to hear you go ahead and talk about what is driving these social media platforms, specifically TikTok, to be the way that it is about these peptides, specifically GLP-3.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I'll start off with is that it's technically always been a violation of their guidelines to promote these types of compounds. The
Harmful.
reality is like it says medications, anything like that. So you can't be an advocate for a telehealth company. You can't be an advocate for any of that stuff technically in accordance with their guidelines, right? But I do think that one thing that I know is that when Zepbound and Manjaro and stuff like that were about to hit the markets. They were going through, they got their name and everything was getting close to that approval stage. They started, all of a sudden you would see maybe somebody figured out the name and they created a group, or maybe they had a terzepatide support group or something like that on Facebook. All of a sudden they disappear. And I think what it is the pharmaceutical companies, which they have every right to do. They've been paying millions and millions of dollars to be able to create this compound. They want to take over the marketing and the advertisement and the communications in the space surrounding the compounds as it goes to be launched. And so I think that they're probably putting pressure on the media companies, on the social media companies, to help them mediate the content that goes out there, censor the content a little bit so they can drive the narrative, they can market it the way that they want to. On the flip side of that, though, too, is we're essentially marketing a compound. Now, my personal opinion, like I never say buy this here on my videos or anything like that, right? I'm purely just trying to educate. In a way, that's beneficial for the company because if you think about the skepticism that people have around retatrutide, everybody says, "Oh, the heart rate increases." Well, you know that tirzepatide also does that too. It's documented that it can increase your resting heart rate. And so, in a way, we're giving people a comfortability with it to say, hey, once this gets through the clinical trials, go talk to your primary care provider to switch you from Zepbound over to retatrutide. So I also can see it as beneficial for them in a way to normalize the stigma that might exist around a compound as it's going through the trial period, because it's the information on it is not so available to people in an easily digestible manner that they're going to feel comfortable using it the second it hits the market.
Yep. And that is a good point. And it kind of leads into what, one of the things I want to talk about is specifically with these physicians on social media platforms now. And look, I absolutely understand if people are passionate about these things, just like you and I are, and maybe they don't have any skin in the game. Maybe they do, and they don't lead on to it, or they don't tell you about it. We don't really know. But how do you feel like you're scrolling and we see all these physicians, we see all these, and it could be a chiropractor, it could be a dentist, it could be somebody completely not even truly a medical field that is talking about these things and using their credentials to talk about these things, and sometimes in a positive light, sometimes in a negative light. And I always ask myself, you have a real world job where people are coming to you for true medical assistance, whether that's at an office, a clinic, or a telemedicine company that you work for or operate yourself. And you're spending this much time on a social media platform talking about something that you can't even prescribe to people. So where's this where's the motivation for them to do this type of content, and what drives them to talk about this stuff? Do you think it's truly out of passion, or is there another alternative to talking about this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that it could be a little bit of both. I think some people are passionate, and I think it depends on the way that they put out the information. I've seen, I, I don't know. I think it's tough because I think a lot of the doctors, they, or maybe med spas, even, right, where you have somebody that can, not necessarily a med spa, but maybe like what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like a hormone clinic or an anti aging clinic where you have somebody there that can prescribe a compound, right? If people don't want what they have, if they don't think semaglutide is as good as retatrutide is, then they're not coming to your clinic anymore.
Yep.
And so I think in a way, people, and some of it too, I think is misunderstanding, maybe or maybe misinformation that they don't understand completely some of these compounds. Because I've heard some crazy things out there that people will say about different compounds and the way that they think about them. And so I think that there's probably a mixture of both things, that there could be skin in the game where they want to help their business in a way by telling people that you don't want to use retatrutide, that what we have is going to be better because we have, semaglutide, I don't know, whatever it might be. Or another thing where I really see it too, and this is where that maybe that they have personal benefit too, is I'm sure you see it randomly. People will start asking you about PDA.
Yep.
You can't prescribe BPC 157 as a functional medicine clinic, hormone clinic, whatever, but you can prescribe PDA. And so I've seen people come out and say, you don't want to use BPC 157 because that thing's not FDA approved. It's not going to be able to be used in humans. It's not effective. But
Yep.
PDA, and I'm like, hang on a second. You mean pentadecapeptide arginate,
Yep.
which is a pentadecapeptide like BPC 157? That's the same, basically the exact same compound. You're telling me that it's horrible? No. Like, I think that sometimes you have to look at like what they're trying to say and how they're trying to say it to figure out like maybe what their true motive is. And then you realize, oh, come to us and we'll prescribe you PDA. So
I've
it
had
is tough, but yeah.
I've had conversations with people too in the real world that um, they ask me about weight loss or specifically like appetite suppression. And, and I tell them, hey, we have a compound now that's the greatest weight loss product of all time and is holding more muscle tissue than anything else we've seen so far. So, that's what I recommend. And because it's not FDA approved yet, because it's not coming from a clinic or even considered a medication, they would often bring up, well, I used to take phentermine. Is there a way for you to get me phentermine? I would say, so you're opting for something with a far, what I would consider a far more, a higher risk profile than this thing, simply because this one has been given to you before by a physician. Therefore, you think it's safer than this thing
Yeah.
that isn't FDA approved yet. I mean, we know it's going to be, but needing to have everything completely approved by the government for some people is the end all be all. It's just a recipe for you to end up spinning your wheels and being in the same place that you were last year because you're too scared to take risk. And this is why you and I do what we do. Anyway, you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable with myself continuing to push these things if I didn't actually apply them. And I couldn't say for sure for me that they worked or that they work for people that I manage. So,
Yeah.
and if I have a product that is coming back not effective in either my clients or myself, and I'm asked about that product, I will be 1000% honest with you and say it's not worth your time or your money. You know how much money we could have made probably if we told every 19-year-old, 18-year-old, 17-year-old kid that they could take MK and get huge and grow taller and whatever else. I
Yeah.
mean, I would have three houses by now.
A
But
lot.
the truth is, yeah, the truth is we don't believe in it. We don't advocate
Yeah.
for it. So there is some, uh, you got to have some ethic to yourself. You got to have some decency behind what you're doing and what you believe in for people to even buy into what you have to say. I think that a lot of people can come across being very honest and caring with still having a bad intention behind what they're doing. And then now we're seeing these kids, I say kids, they could be in their 20s, but these influencers pushing the gray market backdoor. I don't know, where they're getting it from, but now they're pushing that on a mass scale and basically hopping into everybody's section saying, DM me, DM me, DM me, trying to do this backdoor, shady, hey, I got some pills for you behind the dumpster or by the Pastafina. So it's just kind of weird now that we've lived in this place where not only do you have U.S. research vendors, you have gray market, then you have these weird pyramid scheme, shady people that are trying to sell you something for the cheapest possible price you could find it, and somehow people are eating that shit up too.
Well, and I think one of the biggest concerns is that a lot of like I have and I've always said that everybody should be working with a provider, right? Because look at your comments in your lives and stuff like that about some of the crazy questions you get asked. Like that is evidence that somebody needs a doctor prescribing them and telling them what to take. But what is crazy to me is that there are kids who are like 16 years old ordering AIs and ordering growth hormone. Like you're like 15 years old, 16 years old. First of all, where are you getting the money to buy this stuff? Either way, I don't care how cheap you get it. Where are you getting the money to do it? How are you taking your parents' credit cards, buying Bitcoin, and like sending it to people and getting it to your like? It's crazy to me. And the accessibility for a lot of stuff is part of the danger with it because people don't know how to do those things themselves and understand like. That's why I say this stuff jokingly, but I will just tell the teenagers, yeah, you want to get taller, drink chocolate milk because do anything but take a freaking AI that's going to wreck your body for the rest of your life potentially. And it's crazy to me to see that happening like on a huge scale.
How these kids can come to the conclusion that they need to suppress estrogen to grow is beyond me. Now, I'll be the first to tell you we have an estrogen dominant culture now. We have an estrogen dominant society, especially an estrogen dominance in men more than we've ever seen in the history of mankind, probably. So, hey, but clean up your diet. Do the other things first that manage estrogen. Get rid of the junk food. And if you want to go apply lowering estrogen to high protocols as a teenager, eat a cleaner freaking diet.
Yeah.
I mean, there are no
Stop playing
shortcuts.
Fortnite all night.
Yeah, I mean, get off your ass, put the popcorn down or the whatever junk you're eating and actually try to fuel the body while your growth
Yeah.
plates are open. um
Yeah.
it's just freaking insane to me. So But where do you see like the future of the regulatory system around this? Like right now, for example, we can talk about these things on other platforms and it not be so hush hush. Do you think the government is in control of TikTok more so than these other applications, these other social media platforms, or do you think that it's just TikTok themselves have a very strict policy about things that don't fall into what their guidelines says we're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, I think it's hard to, I mean, it's hard to gauge. It could definitely be a combination of both. I would say though that I feel like there has to be some sort of pressure that's being placed on it. And I think a lot of it goes to the irresponsibility of people in terms of what I mean, it makes you wonder. Like we got rid of the de minimis exemption or whatever the thing's called. I don't know. I don't keep up with politics or anything like that much. Where any package under $800 are now open to get seized or scanned or whatever, and they cut it for resources. But you go on TikTok and scroll, and people are all talking about importing. Not, I mean, it's not just like peptides, which by the way is like not legal. I don't care if people do it, but it's not a legal thing to do. Just so people understand that they're importing prescription medications, which I think in some capacity has always existed,
Yeah,
right? But you don't go online and you're like, hey man, my dude hangs out on the corner of like Main Street and like Fourth Avenue every single day from 12 o'clock to 3, and you post that online and advertise that everywhere in the entire world.
yeah,
And so I think that it's becoming so big and so like widespread of people just openly talking about these illegal activities on social media and that they are putting the pressure on it. And so I think that there has to be some type of governmental pressure. I think that if I had to guess, the de minimis exemption changes came into place due to pressure from pharmaceutical companies, the FDA, the DEA, companies like that, placing pressure for them to change the regulation status. Because I can almost guarantee you probably wouldn't even believe the amount that's probably being pushed through the borders right now that they're finding and confiscating and seizing, to the point where they said, oh my God, this is running rampant right now. We have to shut this down. We have to find a way to shut this down. And so I think that there has to be pressure from some government entities as well. Like I think there's no way that it's not, because I mean, of course, it's also like the F word thing that I don't think we can say on any platform without getting it shut down,
yeah,
right? Of being like trafficked, like things like that into the United States. But I think it's the whole picture of it all. The amount of stuff that people, I mean, people are literally online. I will scroll through there and they're like, just order these medications from like this random place online and import it into the country because you can get it for cheaper. And I'm like, it's literally like, it's almost like nobody cares to be openly talking about that online. Or I'll see people commenting on videos. I mean, it's at the point where I'm watching a TikTok, I'm scrolling, and a guy is selling gear openly live on TikTok. And I'm
yep.
like, that's crazy.
I've seen videos of guys making it on their TikTok, and
Yes.
how that still exists, but us trying to inform people is not. And
Yeah.
we're only going to advocate for what we believe works and believe has a place in improving people's quality of lives. And look, I'm more on the anabolic, the gear side of things. People are always asking me where to get something, and I'm like, hey, I mean, a lot of these things are underneath your nose. You're just not paying attention. If you want it, you can find it, but just know that there's always going to be risk involved with where you get it, how you get it, where it's coming from, if you're even going to receive it, if it's caught up in customs or not, if it's what you originally bought. It could be substituted with something else. It could be completely fake altogether. There are risks associated with all these things. And I understand that people want autonomy and they want to they want to take matters into their own hands, whether that be their progress as an individual or their health or their weight loss, journey, whatever it is, they want to take matters into their own hands. And so I 100% do support people having some access to things that can change and improve their life without our government having complete say so in all of it. But at the rate that it's becoming easier to get bad stuff or to get harmful stuff is growing just as fast as it is to get the good stuff too. So now we have to sift through what is good, what is bad, and what's real, what's not real, what works and what doesn't work. And they're all on social media at the same time, fighting it out every single day. It's you and I pushing back against the the bad influencers, the negative influencers, the harmful influencers, and the type of content that they provide versus here's the safe thing. We know you're going to do it. We understand that this is what you want to take control of with your life. But if you're going to do those things, here's how we would recommend going about it, the safe way to do
Mhm.
it. So it's a constant battle between them and people like us.
And people too, it's funny because people will get something like I don't like tesofensine,
Yeah.
right? Just in terms of how it works on your brain, it's basically it works the same way as anxiety and depression medications. And I have that, of course, as my banner. And people will join my live and be like, "Wait, don't take tesofensine. I just ordered it." And I'm like, "Well, here's why I say that." And they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And that's another problem with
Yeah.
the accessibility thing is like, teenagers are like, "I'm thinking about taking like Anavar." And I'm like, okay, well, just know that you might wreck your organ function in some capacity. Like, especially you might have to be on testosterone for life. But people just don't. They just are like, wait, this guy got a good physique from taking this, or this person had a better appetite suppression from tesofensine. Let me order it too. And people, it's just like so easy for them to be like, done. Let me
Yep.
have it. And they don't even know what a compound does.
Well, we've covered quite a bit today, and I kind of want to go over and close with, well, what's the future for you? I know that this is now your full-time job to educate, run your school, open up your lives to help people, which is essentially free. I mean, but your school is growing massively, so I'm gonna obviously plug your school right now. But what is your future? How do you see the next 5-10 years playing out for you? Are you going to continue to stay on the cutting edge of what's to come and provide information about it, safe use methods, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's my goal. I think it gets so hard, and that's why. So when I started that school is because like 20 Facebook groups got deleted at one time
Mhm.
that were big in the space, and my goal has only ever been like education, and that's it. And so that's my goal. It just gets incredibly hard to do with the way that everything's going. So that's where I hope to go. I know, well, tomorrow's the day to register for it. So I'm going to go through that J3U course or register for that tomorrow and get into that and just kind of continue to grow maybe outside of where I exist right now, which is mostly the peptide space and see where I can go with that and continue to just like educate people on what these things are, what they do. And, as much as I can, right. I'm going to continue to adapt to whatever the way that things change with social media and what we're able to do and how we're able to communicate it. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope in 5 or 10 years I'm still doing this. The alternative is I play my violin on Saturdays at Target, and that's my way of making an income and doing it. But
Better.
as long as as long as I can continue to do this, I'm going to keep doing it for sure.
Well, hey, you said you're making $1,500 on a weekend at Target, so it's
Hey,
not it's
that's
not
the
a
way to
bad
do
thing,
it.
right? I mean, that's girls do other things on the weekend for $1,500. You can play a violin, so.
I'll do it.
But dude, we got a lot that we can cover in the future. Every week there's something new with the peptide world, and we haven't even covered bioregulators, which anecdotally are showing to be extremely beneficial. Specific ones of them, but we just don't have a lot of human evidence on it. So it's one of those that really is going to take some digging into and kind of uncovering. It's fixing to get more complicated, I believe, with our regulations and stuff here. But there's a lot of things we can touch on. We've got bioglutide in the future, so
Yeah.
there's things we can talk about, and we'll add them on over the next couple, of weeks, and try to keep stacking up cool things to talk about. But this was pretty cool. This was smooth. Me and you have an easy flow, chatting with each other. So I think it'll be pretty easy.
Yeah.
You got anything to say, guys? Go follow a Hacky on what's your both your handles right now.
What is my handle at this point? On TikTok, I think it's Hacky Backup. I think is my page name at this point. I'm so lost at what my names are because I've gone through so many. I think it's Hacky Backup. Um, and on Instagram, I'm Hacky_Hacksmith. I had to change that after I got permanently banned there. So yeah, Hacky Backup. I think if you ever want to verify it's me, just find me live. That's the best
Yeah,
way to do
that's
it.
true. That's true. That's a good indicator. And then mine is bearded muscle on both. It'll be bearded.muscle on Instagram, bearded_muscle right now, I believe, on TikTok, as long as I keep that one alive. I didn't even know you got banned on Instagram.
Yeah, I got a permanent ban and I was able to get it back. We'll just say.
What was that one for? Did they tell you? I've never seen. I don't hear people talk about bans on Instagram as much.
So it was one of those things where I just woke up and it was gone, and I got hit with like 10 things all at once. Like I just woke up to like a bunch of stuff that said violation, but like it was crazy. I mean, I had zero violations. My account was in perfect standing, and all of a sudden, I woke up to like a bunch of videos deleted. Everything was deleted. My DMs were violation. Like it just said everything was a violation on my page,
Yes.
and yeah, it was crazy.
But now you got me concerned. Now I'm not going to sleep very well tonight. But I
Yeah,
don't know, man. Maybe I need to dig into that and figure out what is Instagram after, because it seems like they've got a lot more loose grip on the situation right now than TikTok does. But
yeah.
hey,
I'll
if
give
we
you
both
more details off the record.
okay, deal, because I'm curious what I need to avoid.
Yeah,
I'm trying to walk a straight line now, man. This is,
yeah,
mine was a grind. You can grow your account pretty quick now that you've got a decent like base of people that truly love your content. And it took me 8 months to get to 11K, and it's maybe I can get there in half the time, this go round. But trying to have other avenues like we are doing. You've got your school, I'm starting this thing that, hey, it may grow, it may not grow, but as long as there's other streams of information out there for people to always find us, that's the best thing we can do. Just put our footprint everywhere.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
but dude, it was easy chatting with you, and we'll try to do
Hey
this again
man,
next week. So, hey, hope you have a good day.
sounds good, man. Thank you.
All right, later.
Yeah.